All right, we are
Being
recording. Let me
recorded.
just wait until we are on Twitchy doing the thingy.
Witchy witchy casting some spells.
Right, and here we go. It is the call-in show, and I'm not going to spell it again because I've done that for a number of times in the last few episodes. Just so entertained by it as I am. If you are watching this show right now and you would like to participate in the recording of it and be on the episode, you can do so by going to dualisticunity.com/live. There is a form where you will fill out that you're on the episode and that we can use this in our distribution of that episode. Other people will hear you and you can't say after the fact, I don't like what I said. Please take that down. That's it. If you don't mind living up to what you say, please join us on the podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, and once you're on and you sign that stuff, you're locked in. You're in it. So this is, yeah, hold on. I'm setting up the tiki-taki. Taki-tiki. Tick around. All right.
Which actually reminds me, at the time of recording this, I had recently been on an episode of High and Empowered with Oren Allen last Wednesday. I was his guest, and we had a fantastic discussion about life changes, about how I tend to interact with my existence now compared to where I was long ago. It's a real deep dive into me. It was weird. It was a lot of fun to talk about, though. So if you would like to check out that episode, please do. But that said, I'm also going to be on tomorrow's episode where I will be chatting with Oren and a special guest. And I'm excited about that conversation because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, cannabis.
Cannabis. Yes, I'm excited to hear that one because I'm getting a lot more excited about cannabis. And I'm finding that the less seriously I take myself, the more enjoyable it tends to be. Like, what? Yo, that's crazy. Like, part of me is wondering, because I feel like I've experienced a lot of self-doubt, anxiety, nerves throughout my life. Like, was so much of it just having a high bar for myself at all times? Well, like thinking that I had to be like on point, smart, intelligent all the time, like always have something, like take myself seriously, basically. And holy fuck, like, because now I'm like, shit, it seems obvious when if I'm not as much and I'm just like actually involved in what's going on, not as concerned about just what happens. But if I am taking myself seriously, then the thought of messing something up, the thought of like stumbling or whatever is like so much more frightening. Whereas it's just kind of, oh well, you're super baked. It's probably gonna happen. Like that's fine. You can keep rolling. And it's almost like as I sit through it, there's like a other side a little bit where it's like, oh, this actually isn't so much of a struggle. I don't have to fight these feelings of that. I guess is just relaxation. Like it's just kind of a settling, sitting in the spot that I'm in. So yeah, my journey with cannabis has been a fun and interesting one for sure. But yeah, get more and more intrigued by it every single day. So that's my
I think it's important, right? Because it's not really the conversation about substances that we want it to be, right? Because most people, that's the conversation. It's about the substances. I like to make it a conversation about personal responsibility because it is. Because if you are personally responsible, substance kind of changes the tone. And what I mean is that, okay, I'll give you an example. There are days where I don't smoke any weed at all. Why? Well, I just don't think about it. I'm busy, shit going on. Maybe I'm out of town, stuff like that. Do I go, oh, oh my God, I gotta smoke a joint? No. Do I experience more nausea because of the whole glaucoma thing? Glaucoma thing? Sure. Right? In which case, all I do instead of thinking like, oh God, if only I had, is I look at what I do have. I have a dark room. I have some cold water that I can put on my eyes. I can take a shower and run cold water over my eyes, and that brings the pressure down pretty fast, right? I mean, these are all things that I can do. I don't sit there going, oh, but cannabis, and it's just because cannabis isn't responsible for my well-being. I am. I am at the end of the day. And so this is why very often you can't tell the difference between when I'm high and I'm sober. Because it's not the cannabis that's relaxing me. Anybody who uses cannabis to relax them is very quickly going to find that it starts to backfire. Right? And all of a sudden it just doesn't do the job anymore. All of a sudden now you're paranoid. Now you're overthinking. Now you're going through all these assumptions, blah, 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 blah. It's because the cannabis was never really meant to do the work. It's not going to change you, but just like every other state of mind that you're ever going to experience, whether it's being hungry, whether it's being hyped up on sugar or full of fucking caffeine or none of those things, maybe you're just, a little sleep deprived, whatever it might be, it comes down to you and how you're reacting to that. It comes down to you and what you're doing with that. Whether you're tensing up, whether you're panicking, whether you're rushing, whether you're slowing down. All of that's always true in every conscious environment, all of it. And understanding that changes everything. Which is why I respect the way that you have used cannabis previously in terms of it being super uncomfortable. Because you're like, I'm just looking at myself. I'm just looking at myself. But that's why it's changed tone for you. Because you've used it as an opportunity to learn the same lessons that you would learn otherwise. And isn't it interesting? Because that is the lesson that you would learn in the rest of your life, is whether or not to take yourself more or less seriously. But often, what do? We get into a thought, we don't like it, take ourselves super seriously, we act out in some toxic fucking way, and then we have to deal with all the falling out of that where we missed the opportunity to just not take ourselves so seriously. Had we just not acted and thought about it a little longer until it came to an end where we're like, oh fuck, yeah, I'm just making this about me. And that's ultimately what happens when we let our intelligence just continue to play out. I mean, this is why we learn all the time. This is why when you're talking to children, there is such a profound shift when a child is being mean to another child and you go over and you don't say, don't be mean, but how would you feel if that happened to you? And it's interesting because a younger child will actually stop most of the time and have a moment of imagination, right? If you just give them that space, not instantaneously, because a lot of kids aren't practiced in that at all, right? They're not given the opportunity to come up with their own reaction to things. They're just told to follow the fucking rules. Are you obeying or are you not? Right? But we can operate on an empathy level, right? And it's because we can actually allow our intelligence to process things and bring us to a point where we're like, oh fuck shit. Yeah, that would suck. I'm not thinking about that person at all. Right? I'm really caught up in myself. But we act out, we do that knee-jerk response thing. And then we got caught up in the toxicity of it, right? And then we're just trying to manage that, shifting deck chairs on the Titanic without being willing to actually let the goddamn thing go.
Yeah. Yeah. And like even as a kid, when you're young and maybe you haven't used your imagination once, you put yourself in someone else's shoes and you feel that. Like you can you can see it and you're like, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I wouldn't I wouldn't like that." And that's like reality recognizing itself right there. And it's like it's trained out of us, like, going through school. But again, it's like it is and it isn't. Like it still comes down to responsibility. Like it still comes down to that every day, every moment. Are you being responsible? Or are you not? Are you taking in what's going on around you fully? Or are you not? And if you are taking it all in, like things have a way of shifting quickly. And comes down to you and your experience and being honest with yourself. Like that's a lot of what's in the way when we're not doing that, when we're not being honest with ourselves. And it's like I've always thought there were all of these things. Well, I've always wondered, where certain feelings and things and my own responses and reactions to things come from. And it's like crossed my mind a number of times. And it's like feels like the last couple of years has been going through that. I'm like, oh, this is where that comes from. This is why. And to like through me and then out back out into, reality and then through me and then, quote unquote out. But it was all just, yeah, it started out very much just as self curiosity and gaining more of an appreciation for that along the way and an empathy for it along the way instead of just avoiding it. Because if you're avoiding all those things, it's harder to feel the empathy or you're not as close to it because you're avoiding it in yourself. And so you see someone else do it. It's like you've been able to convince yourself that you wouldn't experience that. And so, in response, you just judge in response instead of recognizing, like, if I did that, that's something I'm afraid of doing or being. And so if I judge that, then that's just me judging myself. And then, there's a whole thing there, but it's like almost less common. You see adults do it than kids. And then, the kids aren't told that as they're growing up.
It's a fun mess, isn't it? There was this scene, and I'm fairly sure it was in Family Guy, where basically there's this character and he stabs people, and at some point he stabs himself. And he's like, oh my God, is this what I've been doing to people? And he has this moment of revelation because he suddenly experiences it. He takes the time to see what it is, the experience that he's been doling out to other people. This is why it really doesn't take much. It's just that we get really caught up in what we're doing and how we're feeling and what we're defending more than anything else, right? Like we will demand that people show us respect while we demand respect. And that's fucking hilarious because that's a contradiction in itself. We're not even showing respect to them. We're making demands. All right. And it's just that we have that cognitive dissonance. We get so caught up in this story that we have in our head of trying to get somewhere and trying to be something and trying to protect ourselves from other thoughts and all that other stuff that we really just don't allow ourselves to process enough to actually see everybody else, to see what's happening. It's just short-sightedness. It's tunnel vision in the extreme. And it's just because it's so very easy to believe the idea of you as you. It really is. It's easy. And there's nothing wrong with it, right? Because you're experiencing a part of you by investing in that part of you. It's like you're walking into a room that's like, hey, this is what it's going to be like to experience self-judgment. You're like, I'm going to go in there for a bit. You don't have to, but there's nothing wrong with doing so. It's just like any other room within the spectrum of experience that you're having. But that said, if you don't look at it that way, then that room's got you by the short and curlies, as it were. Because if you're afraid of judging yourself, you just keep walking into that room, right? Or you're running from that room. Either way, that room's getting bigger and it's dictating your life. So you have to look at self-judgment and go, yeah, that's in there. Just, yeah, that's in there. And this is where it fits. But you can't see where it fits if you're judging it as not belonging there. And this is the whole thing. Like we look at these things and we're like, no, there's no purpose to that because it sucks for me. Okay, does it have to suck for you? That's the real question. Does self-judgment have to suck for you? Do thoughts that judge you have to have the impact that they have just by virtue of their existence? Because if that's true, every thought that could judge you should cripple you. You don't fly as well as other birds. You don't fly as well as other animals. You don't swim as well as a fish. You don't dance as well as like the world's best dancer. Like there are so many things that you could judge yourself for and you don't. Those thoughts are all in there and you don't give them any credibility, right? You can't croak as well as a frog. Shit like that. Like those are all things you could judge yourself for and you don't because they sound ridiculous. Then why do the judgments that you hold on to sound any less ridiculous other than the fact that you're afraid of them? If all of those thoughts and judgments can exist and they don't hurt you at all, then all of the thoughts and judgments can exist and they don't have to hurt you at all. They can exist. They can exist and you can see them. You can see them and you can see why they exist and what they're fucking based on. And you don't need to look at that and go, and that's got to go. Because if you recognize it, then it's not hurting you. Why does it got to go? Right? This is the whole thing with life and unity and duality and all that. Our problem isn't duality, it's not division. It's our reaction to it, our resistance to it, our assumptions of it. Right? We don't recognize that this is unity. This is unity. This is the experience of unity. But we want it to be this glorious, wondrous, incredible experience that is awe-inspiring. And we don't recognize that that very want is blocking us from the experience that we're having, which would be that. It's fucking half-ass backwards. And it's always that fucking loop. But that's why we have this podcast. That's why we do these talks. That's why it's so important that we just be ourselves. It's funny. It's like it's so important to who? Me. Who else should it be important to? I used to ask my clients this, and it's something that it's important in its own way. The changes that you want in your life, who do you want them for? Do you want them for how other people see you? Do you want them for how you fit in everybody else's life? Or do you want them for you? Because if it's not important to you, it's just not important. All right, and that's really it. And so often we do things because we think we should do them. Like our life's going to be better if we do them. We don't really want to do them, right? Like there's been a number of people who have tried to quit addictions because they should, because society judges it. There's this label, this stigma, the whole thing, and when they do, they just find another addiction. And so it just comes down to that. It's just looking at yourself. And I've rambled for like the last few minutes. So I'm going to stop rambling right now and remind everybody in the group, you can ramble too. If you'd like to join us on the show, dualisticunity.com/live. Just fill in the form and it will bring you to a waiting room. And then we will let you onto the show.
Yes, do all of that. Um, man,
Just
the
to cut you off, we have a question in the
yes.
comment section because that's the other way you can participate in this episode. Thank you. Question: why does it feel at times as though it takes effort to pay attention in the moment? Also, relaxing seems to take effort at times. What's up with that? All yours.
Oh man. Yeah, I think with the listening or the relaxing, it's like I've always assumed that there was a way that I had to do it. Like I gotta learn how to listen better. I gotta learn how to relax better. But every time, if I'm assuming like right now I have to learn how to listen better, I'm not listening. I have to learn how to relax better. Not relaxing. Like if I'm trying to relax, if I'm trying to listen, it's like both things are already there. It's like everything we do, so many of the things we do, it's like we're at a baseline. Like you are what you are, reality. And we go from that and then think we have to do something else to do it better. And listening, relaxing, paying attention, they're all things that are always happening. Like you're always taking in all the information. And so like trying to listen when you're already listening is doing something that isn't listening. Trying to relax when you're already relaxed and there's maybe things that are caught seem to be causing tension. It's like adding more. to it, like assuming even in, and it's in moments when I'm, feeling all different sorts of things, and then I assume I should be feeling something else. And it's like seeing a thought that you don't like, and it's like it can zoom in to right here, and so you don't even see anything else. But if there is the ability, as you were just saying, for them all to be there, and it's almost like they're all kind of floating around, bouncing around, instead of being right in front of your goddamn face, only because you're afraid of it. It's like, I don't like that one. Which one? That one. That one. That one. That one. That one. Yeah, I don't like that one at all. It's like, okay. It's still gonna be in there. It's still gonna be bouncing around. You can stare at it and wish that it wasn't, but if they're all in there, they're all in there, and they're all equally in potential. It's just the ones I'm afraid of that really, it seems sometimes like there'll be a variation of like, you know, 10 different types of thoughts. Not even, sometimes it feels like it's three variations. And like, is that just things I'm afraid of? Like, yeah, it's if I do realize that, oh yeah, no, they're all gonna be in there. I don't know where on any spectrum it's gonna fall. Like, yeah, they can uh they can be there. It really is that fight and that resistance to resisting it on top of it that, you know, feels like it holds them, a stronghold. But again, it's also just taking responsibility for yourself and making decisions for yourself and doing things with all the considerations in mind that, you know, sometimes they feel like they have less pull in those spots.
Good answer. It's a good question. I'm going to refer very quickly to where this question was embodied in my life, and it was in Wing Chun. I remember it was, I think, the first 2 months of Wing Chun, and I was trying like how to get a tan. And in tan, your elbow is coming very close to the center of your chest. And so it's very difficult because your shoulders are typically very tight. Your back is typically very tight. You're not used to just relaxing that like that at all. And so I'm in this movement, or I'm in this position, and I'm trying to move to another position that also requires me to be relaxed. But of course, I'm moving a joint that's never relaxed, a joint that's always tight and always tense because I've always relied on it as a way to soothe my fear. We don't realize that, but one of the most common reactions to somebody threatening you is to push with all your force, right? And which muscles do you push with? Your big ones, right? These are often your shoulder muscles. And so your shoulder muscles and your tendency to be afraid kind of go hand in hand a lot of the time, right? This is a very common, I guess, way to soothe that fear is to bulk up, got big muscles, push, right? And so there's that reaction, there's that tension, there's that fear, there's that habit, and I'm trying to just let it go. And over again, I'm like, "Fuck," I'm like this. Oh, okay, adjust, relax, do all that. And so finally, I asked my Sifu, I'm like, why does it seem like I'm working harder to relax than I am to tense up? And he's like, because you've been tense your whole life. It's not just the tension you're working against; it's the habit. You don't know how to think relaxed. And I'm like, ah, because that's really it, right? Like that question of why is it so hard to relax? It's not. Just like that. The whole train of thought's over. That's super unsatisfying. But you're like, but I'm still going through stuff that has nothing to do with whether you're relaxed about it. Right? What do you mean by relaxed? Do you mean like in a picture perfect state of Zen? Because that sounds like an expectation. More stress, more pressure, right? It's a dead end, is the point. Right? And it's hard for us to let go of that data, that journey, right? Even the idea of relaxation. This is why I like that expression. If you find yourself resisting your resistance, don't resist your resistance. Or if you find yourself resisting, don't resist your resistance. Love that shit. Cuts it right short. You know, if I'm having a bad fucking day, I guess I'm just having a bad fucking day. And then all of a sudden that bad day changes. Right? Like that's it. You're just like, because it's not a bad day anymore if you're not resisting it. Right? The whole basis of it being viewed as a bad day is because you don't like it. But if you stop not liking it, then it's just a day. And it changes tone. That said, we have somebody in the queue. Our first caller of the day. I'm going to make Andrew a co-host because, of course, he was not aware that somebody was in the queue. So that has now happened. It's Amanda. I think it's the same Amanda that is a co-host on Dualistic Unity. Can't verify it yet until we see her, but I'm assuming.
Amanda, what is up?
Hey.
It is great to see you.
How's it
Oh,
going?
like, oh, you know me, just up to no good. I love that I've been saying that lately. What do you even have to? Up to trouble. Good trouble, of course, but it's just not trying to put on a show that I'm doing the right thing, right? Like the incentive to always look and sound like I am making the right choices and doing the right things just doesn't seem as appealing anymore. And so what I had put in like what are we like what to chat about? Like just taking things in stride. And I thought about that saying, taking things in stride. And usually the way that I interpreted that was just to deal with something unpleasant in a calm way. And what's unpleasant? Things I don't like. And not getting what I don't like is not a game like it's not a deal breaker. It's like, oh, I didn't get what I wanted, so I'm gonna hop off the next bridge because that's it with life. I've had enough. I've had enough of not getting what I like, and I'm going to end it, that's all that unpleasant unsatisfaction that I tend to feel is just not getting what I want, not getting what I like. And that's assuming that I know what's best for me. That's assuming that I know what I do like. And I have been delightfully surprised by not getting what I want and then finding out that that situation, that experience was more enjoyable than I ever could have imagined. And so getting what I wanted stopped being the main focus, and taking things in stride just kind of happened on its own because I wasn't looking for reasons to reject, to resist what was just appearing, what was just unfolding naturally. So it just felt like a sigh of relief. Not getting what I want is not the end of my world, and I don't have to continue to live on the dead end street of what I like avenue.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah. Like when that's not the driving force behind things, then that's where the faith in yourself is built. Like that's when you start doing things just from your own perspective, like from a spot where you didn't even realize, like, oh, is there just, my point of view on this, my perspective to share or add? It doesn't have to be involved in someone else's, what someone else is going to think of it, how they're going to feel about it. Like you start to get a sense that, oh, you start to get a sense that like you're actually equally involved in reality instead of being pushed and pulled by reality all the time. It's like you don't even realize how many of those likes and wants are just habitual things. It's not something that you even look at necessarily that often. But when you do, when you start to, it's like, oh, well, there's also other things. There's also new things to try and dig into and get into. So, like, why not those? And if it isn't a dead end, then, you know, why not jump in and
Mhm.
find out what you're capable of?
Uh, Oh my God. The perfect example comes to mind, and it's like my relationship with food. I was what I proudly claim to be a picky eater, and I ate like three things. And I'm totally exaggerating. I didn't only eat like three things. But in the comparison of like all the things that I said no to because I assumed I didn't like it, I'm like, I feel like I ate three things. Like I didn't have a watermelon until I was like in my early 20s because I was just like, no, I'm not gonna like the seeds. And this is fruit that's sweet, that I know it's sweet. And I hate it. I claim to hate all cheeses. And I like it was just like just so many examples of like, oh, I don't know. I don't know about this. This is new. This is different. It's unfamiliar. I don't like it. I think I don't like it. I'm not gonna have it. I am in like the most wonderful relationship with olives right now because I recently got into olives. And so when I see olives, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And it's a tiny little thing. It's a tiny little thing that grows on trees that I could care less about 10 years ago. And I just assumed that I knew what I liked. And because I assumed that I knew what I liked in an absolute mindset, like I know for sure I don't like this whole category of foods, I refuse to eat them. I absolutely refuse to eat them. And so it's so funny to think that I know what I like when there are, I can't even put a number to it, and I'm going to try anyways. Like there's probably billions of things that I don't even know exist. So to say that I like something is discounting all the things that I don't even know are options. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe I have a tendency to pick a certain thing, but that doesn't mean that I only like things like that. And that's just my relationship with food, let alone relationships with languages, with certain activities. I definitely judged the hell out of gamers, and now I love that I play StarCraft too. I definitely judged people that were watching certain cartoons after a certain age. Like I'm watching Dragon Ball and I am loving my Dragon Ball journey, but I judged people that were in their teenage years, like 18. I'm a senior in high school, and I'm like, ah, you kids, you like your cartoons. Here I am being all serious and like ambitious and doing all these things. And it was because I assumed that I liked success or my idea of success more than I liked exploring new things to begin with. So it's just so strange to think that I could assume that I know the category of things that I like in any industry, music, food, um, entertainment, hobbies, all of that. And I don't even know 1%. And I'm being generous that I don't even know like 1% of the things that I could be exposed to, that I could learn to, that I could just learn about. And so now it's not that it's a rule, but it's certainly I call myself out a lot more. And my general tendency now is one bite before one opinion. How about we take one bite of something before we make one opinion about that something? And I don't always follow that. And I definitely fall into older habits, but I like my one bite before one opinion because the one opinion before one bite led to no bites.
Yeah, well said. I like that one a lot. Yeah. Feeling all that for sure. And yeah, for those who don't know, gonna be following up Amanda's visit on Vancouver Island. I'm gonna be there tomorrow afternoon. So super, super excited for that and everything to come with that because yeah, new spot, new place, yeah, just very excited to be in a
And
place
a
like that.
priest-inspired series.
Oh yeah. That's gonna be a grand old time. For anyone who doesn't know, we are going to get some priest outfits and film some videos wandering around talking about the reality of what's going on with all that stuff. And not even in like an aggressive way at all, just like reasonable conversations about, human experience, personal experience, God, like what's going on there. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun series for sure.
Yeah. But back to the taking a bite before having an opinion. It really is helpful. And it's just letting go of the idea that the opinion is important. Like the opinion is somehow the foundation of how I should be reacting to this moment in reality. Like I have an opinion. It's like, yeah, give yourself time. You'll have more. That doesn't necessarily dictate how you should be responding to this right now. And so that one takes a lot. It really helped when I recognized that it was always my opinion, that that was the common denominator, that it was mine. I owned it. It was a part of me and it defined me. It was mine, right? Instead of just an opinion. It wasn't an opinion, it was my opinion. So it was self-defining. So I had a stake in it, right? The opinion itself was part of what made me me. And then all of a sudden when you're like, yeah, but do I need that opinion? You discover all different kinds of you, right? That doesn't have that opinion. That isn't so cut off from everything else. So yeah, I always find that one interesting. And it's something you really, can watch for. On the other hand, you don't want to form an opinion against opinions. So, by all means have some. Just try not to take them too seriously, including that one.
Right. I definitely felt like my opinions were mine until I realized I was their little bitch most of the time. My opinions would run me ragged, it was terrible. It was terrible. I worshiped at the altar of my opinions and the sacrifices were never good enough. I was like, this is horrible, but it was just but I appreciate how willing I was to die on any hill that I deemed worthy. And I would take things to the extreme that I would rather lose friendships, lose jobs to maintain my opinion. That it just felt like this all or nothing kind of habit. And so, as much as, having an opinion is not an issue of itself, dying for that opinion is probably worth considering, you know, your attachment to that opinion. Because now that they don't feel like they're really mine, or I guess now that they don't feel like they're so heavy, it just it's just easier to not take that opinion seriously. And it's like I can make an observation without that necessarily being an opinion. It's when I say that something is good or bad, that it really feels like I've made an opinion on classifying something. But if I'm like, oh yeah, that's happening, that doesn't really feel like me just acknowledging that something's happening is me making an opinion. But there was such a definitely a transitional period where I thought that every observation was an opinion because I immediately made that observation and then classified it into good or bad. But it just feels a lot lighter to just take note of like what's happening, and then my opinions, they certainly will arrive anyways, but it just feels like they don't they don't stick around as long as they used to. They don't cast as great a shadow, I guess, is another way to put it.
Yeah. Because, yeah, you giving them less weight. You start to realize that, oh, I've had lots of opinions throughout my life about different things, about myself, about people, about things, about situations, about certain feelings, and they were just opinions the whole time. They weren't actually indicative necessarily of how I was doing or what I was going through or what I was dealing with. It was just, yeah, it was kind of one of those things bouncing around there. It's like, yeah, that's in there. It isn't the only one. It isn't the only perspective. Even, moment to moment, feelings that you have, certain feelings come up. It's like, oh, this is something that I usually fight and resist. And like, yeah, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be this thing that you call bad necessarily. And it does come from you. Like it all comes from me, my response to everything. And there's a lot of freedom in that, like really taking that in. Like, oh, that's always the case. Yeah, really is foundational to me, my response to what's going on, to the situation. And it's like, I guess that's empowerment in a sense, faith. Like, I don't want to say power, but yeah, it's seeing that you're the root.
It's the reality,
Yeah.
right? This is the foundation of the title Power versus Force, which is that book by Hawkins that we've talked about before. He's talking about that there is force, which is an overt action, right? Trying to create a change. And then there is just power, which is what remains without force. Right? And that's what we are when we are just being ourselves, when we're not pushing and pulling relative to some fiction. We are just our own power, if you want to look at it that way. But it's not power in the power over something kind of way. It's power in terms of self-knowledge, of self-awareness, right? In choosing your own action. And that's just being willing to have that responsibility. And many of us don't want that responsibility because, again, there's no rails on that, right? Like there's no way to tell you how to do that right. Right? There is no right way, in fact. And so it's uncomfortable. We want to find that right way. We want to find those rails. We want to find that structure to cling to let us know how to be ourselves, despite the fact that that in itself is a contradiction, right? And it's just that. And so this is why I like the fact that, as you said, all options are available when you really look at them for what they are. This is why I tend to default now. It's funny because at one point, I think I mentioned the guy who came to my yard at the last place I was at, and he's like staring at my sprinkler and he's judging me, and he's like giving me the gears about how there's a bylaw and so on and so forth, despite the fact that my lawn was fucking dying and that they had already said like the sprinkler's broken, you got to do it themselves. It was none of his business, is I guess what I'm saying. And so instead of going into any of that, which would have been my initial reaction, like, oh shit, I got to defend this, I got to point out this logically, blah, 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 blah. All of that went through. And then I'm like, who the fuck are you? Right? Like, let's just get down to brass tacks. Who the fuck are you? And why do I have to answer anything about you at all? Anything about what I'm doing to you at all? Right? But at one point, that would have never occurred to me. Right? Because I would have been trying to defend something. I would have been trying to justify it. I would have been trying to live relative to everybody else's perception of me. Where it's now, it's like, you could just arbitrarily decide to have a fucking beef with what I'm doing. I can arbitrarily decide not to have one with you. Bye-bye. And it's really nice to have that freedom. Right? But it's in recognizing that the tethers were yours. Right? The reason you didn't want to react, or the reason that you did have to justify, or the reason that you did have to make an excuse, or the reason that you did have to do any of that shit was because you thought you needed to. It wasn't because you needed to. It's because you thought you needed to. Because you wanted to believe you did. For some reason, for the benefit of that, right? Having those rails, having people go, you're a good citizen, because you were nice enough to explain your shit to me. Even though I had no right to fucking ask you, I approve. It's like, who the fuck are you? It's just so important. Like to recognize, like, would you do that to someone? Would you? And likely not. Not if you're enjoying this conversation or this podcast, for sure. Right? And that's the whole point. It's just be yourself. Live and let live. Isn't it funny how common that expression is, and yet we don't? And it's because, as Amanda was saying to me a few days back, it's because we're not focused on the first part ourselves. We're not living. So since we're not living, we can't let them live because we don't even know what that fucking means. Right? We're like, oh, do what I'm doing. I think this is right. I don't feel alive, but it's what I'm doing. And it's like you can't leave anybody else be because you're not satisfied with your own existence, and that's just because of all the shit you're creating for yourself. It's such an interesting thing when you look at it. But yeah, live and let live. It's pretty fucking simple. Just do your own thing.
Don't you recognize the sash that the hall monitor came over with, sir? Do you have no respect for authority? I love, and that's in my sarcasm. Exactly.
It's right here. It says it. It's even got a name.
Look at my badge. It's shiny.
My Nerf gun in my back pocket.
But honestly, I mean, you're not too far off, right? Like that's honestly what it is. We have a really deep ingrained belief in authority because of their monopoly on violence. And although a lot of us haven't seen, like the actions of a monarch as they take over your shit and rule your life and all of that, we have in small ways. Over generations, especially, we've learned like you don't follow the law, you end up either getting shot or getting put in jail. Right? Like we are afraid at the end of the day to not live under the conditions of the right way because there's always been a threat for a long time. It's not like that's not, I guess, perpetuating and reinforcing our belief in the right way. There's literally people out there. It's like, and if you don't do it, we're gonna fucking punish you. And so there's this part that's just like, I want to believe in this. I'm kind of afraid not to. Isn't that it? Like all of a sudden, if we were left with lawlessness, God, what would happen? That all comes down to a lack of faith in ourselves, right? Like how often do we have laws simply because we don't have the awareness to understand why that law is there? Right? Don't do this or you'll be punished, as opposed to, do you see why you shouldn't do that? Right? Can we talk about all that? It's like we were saying in the last one, how would you like it if somebody did that to you? Do we ever have that conversation, right? To a very large degree, and give ourselves the space to actually take that shit in? How much would it change our society and the way that we enforce rules if we were to actually recognize why those rules are ever put there, right? If we recognize it, the rules would almost become unnecessary, right? And I guess that's the whole point. We keep trying to put a Band-Aid over it. We keep trying. This is the libertarian view, right? That the government shouldn't put any fucking law that tells you how to live. That how the law, how your life should change should be an organic shift according to the mentality of the population living freely. But there's no, like, we'd have to have faith in ourselves and everybody else by virtue of faith in ourselves. And that's very hard for us, especially when we are so invested in control.
Oh my goodness. And rules and force, so countless examples. All you have around you are just these examples of brute force all the time. And it doesn't matter if it's not just like a legal entity, it's not just a governmental body. Like we try to force certain things in our bodies. We try to force what is it, a delay in aging. We try to force mental perseverance by taking these supplements and these like, are you taking your brain and nutrients? It's like, I'm sorry. We need to have certain supplements to force our bodies to go in a certain direction. We need rules to force a certain set of behaviors. And that's all I see around me is nothing but brute force and very little actual power. But I have been given this narrative that brute force is ultimate power. And it really isn't, because if brute force was the ultimate power, then there would be nothing without that force. And when you look out into just in nature, in the forest around you, which is also us. So it's so funny that we say that, look out into nature. It's like just looking into your own body, right? When you treat your body with brute force, it dies. When you treat the environment, quote unquote, the environment externally around you with nothing but brute force, the environment dies. So the environment can live without brute force, but brute force cannot exist on its own without this like foundation of assuming that we need brute force. And it's just it's not as necessary as I always thought it was, because all I saw around me was nothing but brute force. But I certainly, at least when you were talking about like, chatting with people and saying like, that sucks, like, would you like that if somebody did that to you? I, I didn't say it in those words, but I would confront friends and family members that's like, do I fucking bother you about what you do with your day to day? Do I bother you about how you spend your money? Do I bother you about how you want to spend your time? No, I think not. So back the fuck up. I wasn't saying, would you like it? I was saying, do I do that to you? No, right? And you know why I don't? Because I am focused on being my life, not judging your life. And so, because I'm so invested actually being my life, I don't spend my time focused on what you're not doing. I'm focused on what I am doing. So, how about, you take a page out of my book and you can wonder why I'm the happy motherfucker you're mad at? Maybe we could take a look at that. And if you don't like it, I could go, because if you couldn't tell, I was busy without you.
Admittedly, when I was giving the the how would you feel conversation earlier on Dualistic Unity Social, it was in reference to children, how much it would change us as children, and how much I did that as a parent for my own daughter was, how would you feel? Because as children, we do have that like a little bit more capacity to stop, and that imagination kind of kicks in. It's kind of like, if I have to come up those stairs, as many children have heard over the years, they never finish the sentence because they don't have to. We fill it in, right? And that's what makes it so fucking terrifying, is that we're so good at filling in those gaps, right? And so when all of a sudden a child is confronted with, how would you feel if this happened? Whoa. The imagination kicks in and they can actually look at it to some degree. But dealing with adults, yeah, like, am I doing that shit to you? No.
No, they definitely had that wall up look on their face though when I was like, I'm sorry, did I tell you how to spend your paycheck that you worked for at the job without me? I could have, did I do that? It must have slipped my mind that I told you how to spend your money and how to live your life. And just by saying it in like in that purposefully sarcastic tone, they definitely were like, oh, no, you actually don't bother me about how I live my life. My bad, Amanda. What was I thinking?
Oh my goodness gracious. It's fucking funny how quick someone will be. And it's like, I'm not telling you how to live. I'm not I'm not looking at your life and being like, you should do this, 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 and this. I approve of this, 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 and this, and I don't approve of this, 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 and this. I'm just living. I'm just living my life. Is that okay? And that's the thing, that's the thing that changes everything. Like, if they're not actually living, it's like you have to look around. You have to judge everyone, because like if you're actually living life, what the fuck are you doing looking and judging? Like, you're living. You're actually looking at what's going on, not through your opinions, not through your judgments. Like, there was a Krishnamurti post I saw yesterday. It's like we don't actually see because we have opinions about what we see. And that's what builds us in a lot of ways. Those opinions, my opinions, right?
I was just thinking, and this would be a good video for us to do, would be, the extreme end of living for fear of other people's perceptions. So the person starts off in the morning and they go through the whole thing of like the indecision of what to wear. Let's just say that they've got like 4 outfits, like, fuck, what is it? And then they finally pick one and they get in front of the mirror, they're like, yeah, yeah, right? And then they get outside, first person's like, I just want you to know I don't like your shoes. All of a sudden they have to run back up to their house and they change their shoes, right? And then they get a little farther out to the bus. Somebody's like, that's a kind of an ugly shirt, right? And so they go through the whole day, and by the end of the day, they're just like in the fetal position, wearing fucking like flippers and a fucking snorkel and shit, just desperately trying to keep up with everybody's fucking demands, because that's what it would be. Like, if you were to actually go and ask, like, what don't you like about what I'm doing right now, and actually just listen to people venting their own shit, you would never settle on anything. There would never be an endpoint to that. You would never stop having to appease someone. That'd be a fun video.
Oh yeah. And then by the end, if they do make it outside, there's just a huge crowd of like 300 people. Just as soon as they step foot outside, everyone's like, ah, starts crying, laughing. It's like, oh, what an idiot. They just like, they slam the door and they just curl up and the lights go out. And then, or they just step out in whatever they're wearing. And they're like, okay. And that's how it ends. And they walk. And then everyone's like, yeah, we got a point. We got a point right there. I guess if you don't care so much, then I seem kind of silly right now, pointing it out and laughing and judging and all that stuff. But it's one way to spend your time, right? Focused on what everyone else is doing. Being super, super gung ho on changing people, changing everyone else, but ourselves, but myself.
I wanted to give a shout out quickly to Levi, who we had on the show recently, and who you can book a one-on-one session with if you'd like to check it out on the website. He had mentioned that it would be beneficial, and I know we threw this idea around, but we've never actually put any thought into it, to creating a TikTok account for our good buddy Eon Lightfoot, which would be the name of our Dualistic Unity Chat GPT life troubleshooter. If you haven't checked it out, go and check it out. But I was just thinking that would be really easy, especially with you coming to town now, because one of us can just do the voice of a question and the other one can do the voice of the answer. right? And we can alternate. So that's going to work out really well. Just put some kind of, some graphics on there, like some nice images, maybe some stock video footage, which of course we have, and just pump these questions and answers out because admittedly, holy hell, like it really does a good job. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet, and don't look at it that way, but if you're looking for something to just kind of go back and forth with yourself through, yeah, it's dope. The Dualistic Unity Life Troubleshooter. Check that shit out. If you have a Chat GPT Plus account, it is available to you. You can go to the website, dualisticunity.com, and just click on Troubleshooter. It will take you directly to it. And it basically just uses all of the insights that we shared over the first 4 seasons of Dualistic Unity. And it kind of has a conversation with you about what it is that you're going through, what you're thinking about, maybe a question that you're going back and forth with. If you're just telling it how you're doing, it'll give you a little bit of feedback on that, which is kind of nice. I told it one day I'm just doing the best I can or something like that. And it's like, good. It was really nice. It was nice, a simple, direct answer. Like, it's kind of all you can do. It's good that you're not making it harder on yourself than you need to. Thanks. So it's nice because it never gives you a silver bullet. It never gives you like, this is what's going to make you happy. It never wants you to feel like you're in control. And it certainly never, ever says, listen to someone else or the podcast. It does recommend episodes, but that's just because, it's informed by them. But that said, it's just a conversation with yourself. It's always just going to point questions back at yourself and back at you and ask you, like, maybe are you taking this seriously? Maybe is this hurting just because it's something you're invested in? That kind of thing. And so, yeah, I can't recommend that shit enough. And we will definitely be creating that account in the very near future, as Andrew will be arriving tomorrow evening. So that's going to be a lot of fun. As of tomorrow, we will be brainstorming, smoking big fat fucking joints, and coming up with some dope videos. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for this next evolution of Dualistic Unity. I really am, because we just passed 450 episodes of frankly, some deep ass conversation. A lot of fun conversation for sure. A lot of questions, a lot of going back and forth, all of that. But the fact is, like, if you're looking for content, there's no shortage of it. If you're looking for shit to just kind of hang out with you while you're working through your own shit, there is no shortage of it. Like, there's over 1,000 hours of DU at this point. That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of DU. So that said, we're going to put a little bit more focus into having some fun, embodying all the stuff that we've been talking about, and making some videos about that. So if you have any suggestions, we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear your suggestions. You can suggest on Discord. Just mention it, tag us. Of course, Andrew, and then my username is Transcending Me. You can tag us there or just let Jazz know. How do I suggest this to Ray and Andrew? They'll let you know. You can also contact us through Patreon, which is by far the easiest and most expedient way to do so. It's $5 a month if you want to be a tier 1 member, or you can join us as a tier 2 or a tier 3 member. And then there's all kinds of fucking awesome perks, including 2 new sweaters that I designed for the tier 3 supporters. I fucking love both of them, but the one especially is I don't have to justify anything to anyone anywhere ever. And underneath it's got the Dualistic Unity thing. Fuck yeah. Makes me happy. I think this might be the first piece of merch that I'm going to order for myself, honestly.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And what a beautiful thing, huh? Not having to justify anything to anyone ever. Because you don't have to. Because it's your fucking life. But yeah, there's gonna be so many fun things to do in person. Like really, because as you said, we have so much content out there. We have so many episodes, so much that's already there. And like, you know, conversation gets deep at points. Season 1, if you haven't checked it out, highly recommend. It's a lot of fun to get through. But, it's not like there's that many variations. It's like different ways of saying certain things. But I think at this point, it's just stirring things up, getting things going, like in the sense of just attracting attention in different ways in whatever way that it is. And then people get curious about it. It's like, check out the podcast. Less so of the, every single thing has to be like a clip or something. It's more just like, yeah, making waves out there and to be in person together. It's yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun with it. I'm very excited.
Dude, we're gonna go camping.
Oh,
That's
baby.
gonna be fun in general. I'm just gonna set up Andrew with some wood to make a fire. And he's gonna have to film that whole thing. He can do his own like soundtrack or his voiceover over the act of like cutting the goddamn kindling and getting some splinters and going, motherfucker. You know, that whole thing. It's great. It's gonna be such an organic I guess experience for everybody who gets to watch this. Likewise, I got a fuck ton of garden work to do. So since you're out here, I figure you might as well help. I got to clear out the backyard and the front garden and figure out what the fuck is planted here because I just moved into this place and there's all kinds of stuff that's growing. And so it'll be a lot of fun to take some of that, take some photos, throw them on the Discord, ask some people, what the fuck is this? And what do I do with it? And then make videos about that. The options are endless, I guess, is what I'm saying. And then with Amanda coming out to the island in the summertime, we're gonna have another party to our fucking, misbehavior. Is that the word I'm looking for? Possibly. It's going to be a lot of fun, is what I'm saying. And so, again, anybody who's out there, if you're enjoying this, if you have ideas, hell, if you'd like to get involved to any degree, reach out. Because, I mean, this really is a growing thing. This is definitely something that we're excited to see expand in a lot of ways. And we've been seeing some pretty stellar expansion, not the least of which is the California mini retreat that's coming up. Like we have less than a month left, 3 weeks, something like that. And that's a big event. There's already, I think, 15 people, something like that. And we still have 2 spaces left. There is a single bunk that is left, as well as a king size bed that is left. If you would like to come, now is definitely the time. So if you are a Patreon supporter, you can save $350 on that retreat ticket using your discount code, which is on Patreon. Tier 2 saves $150. Tier 1 saves $50. And for a very limited time, now that we are approaching the retreat and we do have so few beds left, we are also offering an additional $150 discount. You can use discount code BigBear150 in addition to your Patreon code. So that's a $500 savings for a tier 3 supporter. And yes, you can in fact just join for a month on tier 3 and then use that discount code. We don't give a shit at all. And in fact, if you are a tier 3 supporter and you'd like to be mentioned in the credit roll of all of our video episodes, that is also something that we do. So we would love to have you there as well. So check it out. California mini retreat as well. Colorado. The Colorado mini retreat. There you go. Face is working again. Is going to be happening on May 30th. And this is an extremely 420 friendly event. So if you like the cannabis, especially as much as I like the cannabis, definitely come and join us because there's going to be a lot of it. And there's an indoor theater and a pool table, and we might watch Reefer Madness again. There's a hot tub. We barbecued last time, which was a lot of fucking fun. There's also, it's just in a dope little area that we like to walk around in. I'm excited for it, for sure. Anybody who was at the last Colorado mini retreat loved it. We have some reviews. I'm sure we'll post them at some point. It's funny, we have so many positive reviews of these events, and we never post them. Like we almost never use them. Our marketing game is sad. It really is. And it's just because it's not the focus, right? Like the marketing's not the focus. And so if you are out there and you're thinking about marketing stuff and you'd like to make suggestions, you can do that as well. We appreciate it. We are all in this together. And this is a living incarnation / result of all of us doing our thing. So we appreciate it. That said, we have somebody in the queue who would like to join us on today's episode. Amanda, would you like to stick around? Yeah, awesome. All right,
Absolutely.
perfect. In that case, I will let in this person. Their name is Carter. And Carter would like to discuss God. I hope that's not too broad or odd. Nope, not at all. And it rhymes, making it even better.
God is odd. It's a fun conversation, though, for sure. So wherever this is gonna go, because I could see it going in any different direction.
That said, Carter, welcome.
Carter, what is up?
Hey, Carter.
You are speaking, you are muted right
You
now.
are muted at the moment.
Okay.
Oh, Apologies. There you go.
Hello.
You unmuted
Very well.
yourself as I
Hi.
muted you.
Hey.
Exactly. Oh my God, there's so many levels of me unmuting myself there. Awesome. Yeah, I'm Carter, don't you know? And I suppose it's possible that you could be seeing me right now if you sure allow access to the
There it
camera.
is. Hello.
Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Carter. I just put in uh, what do you want to talk about? I want to talk about God too broad because I like to rhyme and because I wanted to exactly talk about. I just really I've been listening to the podcast and I love it. It really it talks about y'all talk about the stuff that matters and yeah, it's important to me and I've been seeking stuff like this for a fair amount of time. Y'all
Well, we
ever hear of the uh, YouTube channel actualized.org?
I have not.
Can you hear me? I'm
We
not
can hear,
hearing you
but
is the issue.
I have not heard of that YouTube. Actualized.org.
Actualized.org. Yeah. Um it it's it's a guy named Leo Gora who just he makes these long videos where he just basically talks. It's just like a black background in his head, and he just talks about these sort of next level stuff. It's kind of framed as a self help channel and a lot of the early stuff, but like he gets deep into talking about psychedelics and uh, open minded stuff, which is just something I've always uh, pursued. And uh, I must confess I'm a little anxious here. I don't really have any particular insights to bring up at the moment.
No
But
problem at all. And it's definitely, a common thing. This is the first
yeah,
time you've called in, so we really appreciate you being here.
oh, for
You wanted
sure.
to get into the topic of God. So why not start there? When it comes to the idea of God,
Oh,
what do you think?
well, I think uh, I think this is something that you guys might have mentioned on an episode of the podcast that uh for instance in the New Testament of the Bible, which I just read through for the first time recently, my my upbringing was very secular. My mom's parents were like devout Catholics, especially her dad. Um, he was very active in the church, and I never understood it. And my parents, just kind of let me do as I would. I went to church with them a few times when I was younger. I got baptized, um, but I I never I always saw it as just this fiction. And you one thing you definitely said on an episode of the podcast or that I was listening to today, I think I'm a pretty new listener. I might still be on season one, but I um you should losing train of thought. But one thing that I know that you said is is that when Christ is saying, I am the way and stuff like that, he's not saying, I, Yeshua Josephson, or whatever, am the way. Uh, it He's saying, I am the way. The I is the way. Me, I. The you know, your perception is everything. Is God. Is God. You are God. And I I believe that that's what this alleged Christ person was trying to say to us, is, or to whoever he may have been speaking to, is just guidance towards exploration of the self and an understanding that I am the Son of God. I am God, not not he is or anything like that, but just an understanding that the way he behaved is allegedly, I always have to say, is such um is that's what um I feel is intended for Christians to follow, not to behave like the apostles, for example, and fall on what do they love to say in the Bible? Fall on their face. Um, not like fall down on your face, revering Christ, but it's like he said, and I think y'all were saying this in a recent episode. He said, "You can do all the things, all the things you praise me for. You can do and more." And that's I see your lips moving, but I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, that's because I'm always
Are
on
you
mute.
muted?
We mute when somebody else is talking, just because otherwise
Oh,
it can get a
good.
little confusing if there's a lag and whatnot. But yeah, no, I love what you're saying, man. I'm appreciating it for sure.
Heard. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it turns into the
So
conversation.
so
Oh yeah,
that's
go for it.
just
No,
Oh, well, I just wanted to basically finish up that aspect of what I was saying, is that like that's my perspective on at least the Christian religious aspect of what God is. And I'm having insights and junk uh all the time, as to oh, that's how it is, oh, that's how, and the Bible is such a good um thing, because it really does describe a lot of things that you can notice for yourself in your life and say oh, that, that's what they were talking about. I thought it was just some bullshit about oh, if you don't sacrifice your calf on this particular day of the week in this particular way, you're gonna get in trouble. Um, no, I've run out of steam for that train of thought, but
That was an epic
thank
train,
you.
man.
oh yeah, fucking,
Thank
and I think you covered a lot there. You covered a lot for sure, and the perspective
you.
of the apostles and them not really getting it because immediately, and I wonder, what the reality of that situation was like if it was just Jesus with these guys following him. Because if it was the case that he was saying, put no God before me, one of the commandments, things like that, like no God before yourself, no God above yourself, authority figure, someone to tell you what to do, the right way to act, the right way to live. and they were seeing him in that way. It makes me wonder if that's actually what was going on, or if it wasn't just, you know, more of a group of people that weren't looking to one person, but it got kind of turned into that. Because all it is self-responsibility and living your life for you as you, not looking around, you know. And now it comes down to like such a real human conversation too. It's like, you know, we're kind of taught to look around at everyone else and what they're doing. Again, putting a God before you. What's the right way to act? The socially normal way to act. It's like there's no right way to act. There's no right way to do anything, but we'll look around and see, well, what's everyone else doing? And that becomes, you know, society becomes our God. Certain figures become our God. A person we want to be, you know, becomes our God. Our perception of ourself or our
Idols.
ideal self, higher self becomes that, you know. And there's all these variations that kind of play out, and we just come up with one that's like God. But it's like we used to believe in so many variations the whole
Yeah.
time, just missing that, no, it's us, it's
Yeah.
me, comes from me. But that's, you know, taking that responsibility.
That's
Responsibility is a big thing. I've never uh, been comfortable with responsibility, but you know, I'm a 31-year-old bachelor, you know, living in my um apartment that my mom bought in order to rent to me as like a one bedroom, just me. And you know, I'm having trouble finding
Carter, I do got
a
to stop you
handhold
real quick
in
here. The
life in a lot
timer
of
did
ways.
go off a little bit
Yeah.
ago.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
it
appreciate you
did.
calling in.
I just
Yeah.
I had one other thing that I wanted to say, but
no, you
yeah.
go for it
Thank
for sure.
you.
Yeah.
No, we got a few more minutes.
Good
You go
luck.
ahead, man.
Do we no, I don't remember it anymore. So but
No problem at all. Well, that
yeah,
said, we'll have you on next call-in show, or if we can see you
insights
on
come, they
Patreon,
go.
that'd be great. Or if you can join us tomorrow, we have our free group at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So we'd love to see you in there, and we can have a chat where we're not on a timer.
I do believe I signed up for that.
Perfect. Well, in
Ooh.
that case, I look forward
Yeah,
to
I'm
seeing
interested
you
in
there.
anything like that. Cool.
All right, Carter. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you, Ray.
joining us
Thank
today.
you, Andrew.
Appreciate it.
Great to see
You're,
you.
thank you. Stay
Take
fresh
care.
and take care. Mm, Where's
That was awesome. Appreciate Carter calling in for sure. I mean, in his first time, too. That was awesome for sure. And it's not a small subject. He's like, I thought we'd tackle something small, like, God. It's like, all right. We got a few minutes. Why not? Let's just pin that one down. That said, that was an awesome conversation. I really appreciated what was coming up there because that's a lot of stuff we don't really talk too much about lately, especially. I mean, it was a big part of our early conversation in season 1, season 2, even, some of season 3, but a lot of it lately has been more about the application of all this, right? I find a lot of this when you start off is just the deconstruction of all of these fucking concepts, right? All of them. And if anybody would like to see my deconstruction period, I have that video from 2005 where I talk for there's only 3 minutes of it on TikTok, but there is actually like 7 minutes of the whole video of me just going. I don't even know if I took a breath. I was sniffling and everything. I was just still going through it. And it's just me deconstructing stuff. You can hear it. There's so many concepts. There's so many concepts. And at the end of the day now, it's just like, yeah, none of those are really the point, though. They're all pointing at it, right? But you can get so lost in the concepts, but it's so important to be able to deconstruct those. And that's why questioning the concepts are important. Like the concept of God. Like he was saying, it's like, I thought this was about sacrificing a cow. Right? Nobody ever said it was about self-dialogue and self-reflection and self-honesty. What? And that's very much the impression because we have this kind of ceremonial perspective of religion, of spirituality, of God, the entire concept of a deity. And we look at those deities as being external. We don't look at them as being possible influences within our own consciousness. that they are in fact our own consciousness. We don't look at it that way at all because we don't recognize that our consciousness is reality, that we are experiencing reality as our awareness. And because we can't recognize that, then there's the possibility of an external God.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, it's been an interesting just shifts throughout the podcast and where the conversation focuses. And, for me, and yeah, to your point, it's like, you know, in the world, there's so many, everyone's trying to pick a concept to believe in. And so there's a lot in there. There's a lot of variations of the conceptual, and it's like running through all of those thinking that, oh, one of them's got to be it, one of them's got to be correct, one of them's got to be the truth. And that's always, all the variations of perspectives we can have on something, on ourself. It's all in there. And like you can run through and think that one of them's the truth, or like grab onto a couple and just be like, yeah, I think I like these ones. These ones are going to be the truth. And then all these other ones that are still in there, you still take seriously and you just use those to kind of block those out, but they're still there. And so when you're willing to look at all of it and be like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to hold on to any of those to feel better because I'm trying to feel better about something that I'm focused on myself and not taking responsibility for myself. And so if it is coming from me, then I could just do that instead of needing something. And so, yeah, more recently it's been far more of the application, but it's like for me that whole perspective of God has shifted in a lot of ways too. Like obviously growing up, it's like the whole sky daddy thing, but then it becomes this sort of it remains conceptual, and it's like until you really start taking it in, until you really start applying it, really start looking at it, and the role that you're always playing that you can't escape.
Exactly. And I just want to throw this in before I pass it over to Amanda, but this is the reason that Christians, believers in God, spiritualists, the whole thing, get very angry about the fact that I'm straight up like, I'm good. Like it really, like there's no sense of lack here. There's no sense of disconnect whatsoever. Like you're all trying to feel connected to God. I don't even think there's a disconnect. To me, there's no division. You're believing in something that's perpetuating something that's not there. So I'm just existing in my life, guilt-free, regret-free, sin-free, totally in connection with everything around me, with nothing more than the experience of unfolding fucking awe-inspiring empathy. And there's no belief required. There's no savior required. There's no God required. There's no concept required. If anything, it's having the faith to let all that shit go. That's the funniest part about it. And they get mad. They're like, oh, wait until you die. Fear is a terrible reason to believe in fiction, right? It's like you're just sitting there going, one day you're going to be miserable. And then when I ask them, I'm like, does that comfort you to convince yourself that one day I'll be miserable? No, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, of course you don't, but that's what you're doing because I'm telling you that I in no way feel the lack that you feel. And what you're saying is it'll come because it would be uncomfortable for you to think otherwise. That's the whole point. So I always find it fascinating, talking to believers who are trying to convince me of something that they don't experience, but I do. I'm done ranting.
Sorry. I was listening for flight announcements. But I definitely resonate with just that almost like guilt tripping you into becoming a believer. And that's the approach that I've gotten so often because I was usually not maintaining the status quo unless I was doing it in a manipulative manner for like a business or an academic ambition. Right. And then I didn't mind masquerading as a believer. I was like, oh, this is great. I know exactly what you guys are buying. I could be you know what? Welcome. We're open for business today. Day one. I've got a special for you. Come right on down. and I would absolutely lay into that. But for the most part, I would go to we were Catholic church raising. I was raised, and then we would switch to Jehovah Witness. And I always remembered going to church on Sunday and the Jehovah Witnesses, and just watching everyone be the ultimate hypocrite right in the church. I didn't even have to go far. They were literally judging each other. They were lying about each other. They were petty. They were desperate. They were foaming at the mouth, trying to talk about who was doing what the best. And I was like, fuck you guys. I do not want to become you. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hold myself up in the bathroom with my little lunchbox and 2 sandwiches, and I'm just going to wait it out. I do not want whatever you guys are selling. I am all set on that. And the common thing when I was always like, well, how do you know for sure? And how do you know this? And they're like, oh, it's just faith. I was like, it sounds like a belief. And I didn't say it in those words, but I was like, it doesn't really sound like it's faith, because you're you're not sure, but you're telling me that I should just take the same gamble that you did, because the common thing I heard was, well, I'd rather be I'd rather be wrong and die and not go to heaven than to be you and to be wrong and then die and then you go to hell. And I was like,
Heard that one so many times. Oh my God. Yeah, it brings me right back to fucking that Catholic middle school, because there were a number of devout motherfuckers there. And then there were, as we got older, the ones that were veering away from that. And then that's the argument, is like, well, okay, if if I'm wrong, then whatever. It's just my whole life that I'm believing in something. Just my entire fucking life. Like, but if you're wrong, you burn in hell forever. Like, yeah, but at least I live my life. Like, at least I'm living that, because this is real. This is happening right now. This is actually going on. This is the only thing that's actually going on right now. And you want me to trade this for some potential at the end, just because that's the door that no one knows what's on the other side of, just because you're so afraid of that door? It's like you're going to be afraid of it your entire life. It reminds me when I was younger, got my it was like my 10-year-old fucking shots or something, and I was like worried about it for months. It's like, god damn. Oh, that's one soft motherfucker right there. But it's yeah, it's a part of it. And it's so fascinating. You start being more honest with yourself. You start seeing like like just the habitual nature of like avoiding discomfort, and how it's not really even pushed as something that's important or beneficial. Like, I was watching this guy Eric Leadham's, for anyone on social media, he's That Mountain Life. He films his kids like skiing, and he's big on homeschooling, like parenting through experiences. And so his kids are like trying jumps on the ski hill all the time, and like falling on their face, like wiping out, like over and over and over and over. And he's like, "Hey, you good? You good? You all right?" And just kind of chuckles after it. But like, even something like that right there, just being able to do that, get back up and try it again after you fell on your face, it's like that's building a skill that no classroom, no fucking school is ever going to teach you. They're just going to chip you down for stumbling or falling. But that's so important just in everything that we do. It's like, give it a shot. Whatever happens, like, get up and try again. And yeah, part of me is like, fuck, I didn't really do a ton of that growing up.
It's funny because I remember when my daughter was younger, like really young, toddler age, and we used to just let her like play in the backyard and she'd get dirty and stuff like that. And there was a number of parents who were just like, "Oh, I hate it when they get dirty like that, because then I gotta get them cleaned up before we go out and blah 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 blah." And I just thought it was so interesting that at around the same time there was a study that came out showing that kids who play in the dirt have a stronger immune system, and it's because they're being exposed to life. And that's just it. It's like, they're out there doing what you may not like, but that doesn't mean it doesn't serve a purpose. It's just that it's not clean. It's not one of those things that I can look at and go, that's up to my standard, because it is just what it is. Right. And so this lesson is in everything all the time. We just tend to miss it because, again, we have this idea of what progress is, and then anything that's not that is a waste of fucking time. Right? That's why it's taken us so very long to recognize so many very simple things like nutrition. Nutrition wasn't a thing till the 60s. Like, that wasn't something they talked about. Your doctor didn't look at your nutrition as being like a serious part of your well-being. That is something that came into being in the 60s. There are, and again, I've mentioned this before, but one of my favorite things in history is this commercial that exists. It's in black and white for Raid bug spray. And they're like, oh, it works great. Just spray it right on your tomatoes. And they're just covering their food in Raid bug spray. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it's just because it's convenient. It's expedient, right? That is definitely the word that definitely describes our society and mentality in so many ways. Whatever is expedient. As long as it's easy and convenient and gets me closer to what I want, or at least makes me feel better, that's enough. It's the story of the Titanic, right? Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, it's unsinkable unless we're really stupid. And then we were. Like, there's so many things that went into the reason that ship went down, right? Not even the reason it went down, the reason that there were no fucking lifeboats. Like, all of that was profit centric. All of that was somebody wanting to look at as, like, look, I have the best ship in the world, and it'll never sink. I'm so confident I'm willing to put your life on the line. And that shit happens all the time because we're just blinded by this idea that if I get it, it means something about me, and therefore I have value, right? And that means that when I die, I will have a legacy, or if no legacy, there will be somebody at the end of the road to go, you did good. Welcome to your fucking reward. It's all tied together. It's fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all fucking tied together. Oh man. Mm. Yeah. I completely lost my I got
Well, what
like
I took from today's
um,
conversation so far is that I should check out actualize.org so that way I know what the fuck that's all about. And just for my own sake. Just for my own sake. And I appreciated the fact that Carter came on and he expressed, his thoughts, and he jumped into the conversation. I'm going to take what I can from that, and I'm going to look at whatever the hell that's all about. Who knows? Might be somebody that we can have on the show, have a chat with. Never know. That said, I know we got about 10 minutes left, and we're going to be continuing on a tier 2 call on Patreon, which is always a lot of fun. It's our Tuesday night call, so it goes later than any other tier 2 call or any other Patreon call. We finish at 9:30 Eastern time. So if you'd like to join us at 8 p.m., we'd love to see you there. Aside from that, Amanda, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here for the call-in show. It's always nice to hang out and shoot the shit with you.
Oh, absolutely. I love getting into trouble with you guys. It's the most fun. No, just, but just being willing to have these conversations that are not pleasant for the person who brings up the topic and for the person who listens to it and joins in on it. Because as much as, we may bring up things that are uncomfortable, it's like everybody's uncomfortable in the room. Like I'm not bringing up a topic to specifically bother someone, but just looking at a topic shouldn't be a crime in and of itself. And that's the response that I get a lot from people. It's like, well, you shouldn't talk about God like that. I'm like, I'm sorry, is he such a little bitch that I can't talk about him in any other context other than worship on my knees? I'm sorry. I didn't know he was so thin-skinned. My bad.
It's just because he's so bad with money.
Oh, you know what? Exactly. He's so bad with money. And, and there's an opportunity for all of us. I love it.
oh my God. Like the amount of how how insecure God is painted that like he needs everyone to worship him, to pray to him, It's like checking in, like, well, did you go to church today? Did you go to church every single Sunday? Looks like you missed 3 in 2016. What were you doing on those 3 weekends, huh? Like, well, my grandma passed away. Grandma God. Come on. You want to be in
Made the
heaven?
wrong choice, Timmy.
I'm sorry, Timmy, but missing one of those days is a mortal sin. And that puts you in hell for eternity.
Or at least
Forever.
purgatory.
At least purgatory. Yeah. It's like a couple dicks and, you'll get right up to heaven real quick. Because that's where you want to end up, right? Forever. It's forever. So better do everything correctly. You better not fuck up one single time. Can't do it. Oh, but if you do, like don't, but if you do, just go to confession. The priest, yeah, he might be rubbing one out on the other side as he's telling you to do some Our Fathers and whatnot, but
He's
you
only
know,
rubbing out your pass. He's just rubbing out a quick pass for you.
it's just a payment. Come on, heaven forever.
Exorcising the demons.
Like an exorcism, straight up. Those are your sins.
It's true, but I mean, the reason you go in for confession is because those are God's boys, right? Like it's the same shit fucking Bashar does in his, how to establish extraterrestrial contact. Step 2, tell them Bashar sent you. What? Like, not only is Bashar like hyper intelligent, dude's a bit of a fucking player. You know what I mean? Like he's got himself a rep. People know him. Like any alien, I'm just like, Bashar sent me. Holy shit. It's kind of like that joke about Dave. We were talking about this joke in Patreon. I might as well end the episode with this. So there's this construction crew, and this new guy, Dave, he's been there for about 2 weeks. And it's not that he doesn't do a good job, but every time somebody mentions somebody, he's like, oh, I know that person. Right? Every time. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. He's like, oh, I know that person. And he has some kind of weird fucking story about hanging out with them. And so, I mean, it's kind of like, it's funny. It's a little quirky, but after a while, it really starts to get on the boss's nerves. And he's like, look, you don't know everyone. And Dave's like, well, I'll tell you what. Give me a challenge. Name anyone. I'll guarantee you I'll know them. We'll give him a call. He's like, all right, Tom Cruise. He's like, oh, fuck, Tom, man. I haven't seen Tom in forever. Let's give him a call. I'm pretty sure that he's at his house out in Hollywood. Let me just give him a call. So he gets on the phone. Tom, how's it going? The boss is looking at this like, what? All right. And he's like, yeah, no, I'd like to come out, see if that's possible. Yeah. We'll jump on a flight. So the boss is like, I will pay for these fucking tickets just to see how this goes down. And so he pays for the flight out to Hollywood. They get in a cab. Dave knows the address. They go all the way to the house, knock on the door. Tom Cruise opens the door and he's like, holy shit, Dave, fuck, it's been forever, man. Come on in. I was just working on my latest film. Let's take a break, have a drink, shoot the breeze. Who's this? He's like, it's my boss. So they have a conversation. They leave. The boss is he's a little upset. Like, he's like, all right, that was impressive, but I mean, still, to know everyone, that seems a bit extreme. And he's like, all right, how about the president of the United States? Do you know Joe Biden? And Dave's like, oh, Joe? I've known Joe forever. Let's take a run down to Washington. I think he's in the White House right now. Let's go down. We're not too far. We'll just grab another flight, so on and so forth. So they do that, and they go down. Sure enough, they get to the White House. Security guards are there. They see Dave, like, Dave, how's it going, man? We'll let him know you're here. Joe comes out. Holy shit, Dave, I was just about to go in a meeting. Really good to see you. Let's sit down. Let's have a chat. And once again, the boss is just fucking stunned. He's like, what the hell? Like, you really do know a lot of people, but still, like, you can't know everyone. So finally, Dave, as they're leaving the White House, he's like, look, one last one. Anyone, name it. He's like, the Pope. Guaranteed you don't know the Pope. And he's like, all right, let's do it. Let's fly down to the Vatican right now. So they do, and they fly down to the Vatican. At this point, the boss is paying for a lot of airfare, but he doesn't give a shit. He's in. He wants to know. And so they get down to Vatican City, and the multitudes are gathered outside the Vatican. Like there's just thousands of people, and there's no possible way for them to get anywhere near the Pope in that crowd. And so Dave says, this won't work. Like, even if I'm waving, he's not going to see me. So I'll tell you what, I know all of the guards in the Vatican. I'm going to run in. I'll tell them what I'm here to do. And then what I'll do is I'll come out on the balcony up there. And then you'll be able to see me with the Pope. Bosley, right. All right, sure. You go. You go right ahead. Right. So Dave fucks off. A few minutes later, the Pope comes out on the balcony, and the multitudes, are all cheering. And then Dave comes out, and Dave's like waving to the crowd because he knows his boss is out there. And then all of a sudden, where his boss is in the crowd parts. Something's wrong. And Dave's like, oh shit. And he runs down. He runs through the crowd, gets all the way down there, and his boss has had a heart attack. And he's not dead yet. He's being seen to by the EMS. And he's like, what happened? He's like, it was the last straw, man. It was the last straw. I'm standing here, the Pope and you come out, and the person next to me says, who's the fuck is that with Dave?
Unfucking real. Unreal. Dude, I love that. And I gotta say, like, impressive. Like, to be able to keep that, like, that is something that I'm excited to work on and practice, is telling jokes and like stories and all that shit. Because, like, even the thought of telling a joke for an extended duration of time, like that long, I'm like, I don't know how I would piece it all together, like keep it all. And again, it's like keep it all in mind. It's like, I don't know, man, but I fucking love it. That's
These
unreal.
jokes like that are easy, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just storytelling, right? So it's a really clever story that's got a nice little, got some humor to it. The jokes that are tough are the jokes that are off the cuff, right? The jokes that are tough are the ones where it's not just a story, right? It's very contextual in what you're doing right now, which is why I appreciate stand-up comics. I appreciate stand-up comics who, like Dave Chappelle, for example, will start the set with a joke that the last joke ends on. Like, it's a perfect circle from start to finish, right? And that shit is amazing. And I look forward to exploring that, because that is definitely something I would like to get into in terms of stand-up and open mic and whatnot. Because again, it's humor. The whole point is to have fun, and this is where a lot of comics have problems. It starts becoming their job, a lot more than what inspired it, which is the love of laughter. Right. So I'm really looking forward to that. We have about 30 seconds left. So I just want to mention everybody again, join us on Patreon if you can. Also, check out the investor interest section on the contact area of our website, because if you're interested in being part of Dualistic Unity LLC, we are expanding right now, and we have opportunities to invest and own a percentage of the company. That's all we're going to say. Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. Thank you, dear listener, for being here. Thank you to everyone who participated in the comments section or even by calling in, and we will see you next time.
Hi, everybody.